Hello everyone. I'm not sure how to explain what's happening to me, but I'll try. It started a few months ago. The day my grandpa died, I'd been to enough funerals to know the rhythm. Black clothes, hollow condolences, that heavy air of finality. It was all too familiar. That day I learned grandpa left me his house. But he left me something else too. A plain white envelope with just two words scribbled on the front. Read carefully. Inside was a note that would change my life. It read to my grandson, Nathan, "If you're reading this, it means I've failed, and that I'm no longer here to see you become the man I always hoped you would be. There's something that you need to know about our family. Something that I've kept from you your whole life to protect you. You've inherited more than just a house. You've inherited a family secret. There's a door upstairs in the attic that sits in the middle of the room. You haven't seen it yet, but you will. It's a door that chooses to show itself to you. And once it does, your life will never be the same. It only appears to the men in our bloodline. I couldn't explain it to your grandmother or your mother. They thought I was crazy because they could never see it like I could. I've managed to keep the door locked away for over 60 years, so that your father could raise you and give you the childhood I never could for him. Every night of my life was spent standing in front of that door and making sure it stayed closed, because if no one is watching, it opens. It can't ever open. That's why this next part is important. You need to heed these rules no matter what. Do not open the door no matter what you hear. You must be standing or sitting in front of it. You cannot be more than 10 feet away. When the voice behind the door speaks, do not respond. Do not close your eyes unless you want to open them again. Always remain at your post. You can sleep when the sun rises. There will be more. And when they appear, you need to be ready. The door is always watching and learning you. Your resolve will be tested. I won't sugarcoat things. If you fail, you will die. That can't happen. For if the door is left unguarded, the world will be in grave danger. I hope you're stronger than I ever was, Nathan. I believe in you. Good luck, love, Grandpa Bill. The note shook me to my core. I'd always looked up to Grandpa Bill. He was my last real connection to my parents, both of whom died in a house fire when I was 17. I never got to say goodbye. And I never had closure. My grandmother passed a year later, and after that I was left with a few distant relatives who barely remembered I existed. But Grandpa, he made me feel like I still belonged somewhere, like I hadn't been completely forgotten. Losing him felt like losing the last piece of myself that still remembered what home meant. For a while I didn't even want to be in the house. The memories, the silence, all of it felt wrong, but I had to be strong. Just like he would have wanted. I couldn't let the door win, moving in and facing the door. I moved into the house immediately, and that night is when my duty began. As soon as the sun went down, I took my grandpa's note with me and went upstairs to the attic. When I reached the top of the stairs, I laid eyes upon the door for the first time. It stood in the middle of the room. Its crimson-red wood was warped and shone faintly in the moonlight from a small window nearby. Scratches ran across the surface. Deep gouges like something had tried to claw its way out. Or in, I sat a few feet away, not daring to get closer. It just stood there, silent and still for now. But I couldn't shake the question that lingered in the back of my mind. Why was my family given such a peculiar task? The longer I stared at the door, the more it felt like staring into an answer I didn't want. The silence pressed against me, thick and waiting, the first signs of horror. Nothing happened for the first few hours. But a little after midnight I heard a knock. At first I thought it might have been my imagination. But I heard it again. This time it was louder, heavier, and unmistakably coming from the door in front of me. I fell backwards and watched the door shake from how hard the knocking had become. Eventually the knocking stopped, but the air was moving. It wasn't wind. It was slow, warm, and rhythmic. The door was breathing. Each damp, sour exhale brushed my face. The smell of decay curled like smoke. I backed up, but remembered not to go too far away from the door. I didn't say a word or move again until the sun came up. When the light finally touched the door, it stopped breathing. That's how it was for the first week. The toll on daily life. Life outside the attic felt paper-thin. The price of a routine I was still learning to survive. My coworkers started noticing. The dark circles, the zoning out during meetings, the way I'd flinch whenever someone tapped me on the shoulder. One of them joked that I looked like I was living in a haunted house. I laughed, but I didn't correct them. I burned dinner twice, forgot my neighbor's name when we crossed paths, and nearly drifted off behind the wheel at a red light. Then the sound started following me. The fridge humming downstairs began to sound like chattering teeth. My reflection lingered a little longer than it should have. Sometimes I'd catch myself whispering the rules, not to remember them, but to convince the door I still believed in them. It felt like a pact, like a ritual I couldn't escape. With every repetition, the rules grew heavier. They stopped feeling like protection and started feeling like chains. Everything real was starting to feel fake. And the only things that felt real were the voices and the door. Day after day, night after night, my life split in two, one under the sun, the other in the dark. By day, I'm just another exhausted office drone. By night, I'm the gatekeeper. Work 8 to 5, eat, sleep if I can, climb the stairs, watch the door until sunrise, and repeat. Every night blurred into the next until time itself felt like another rule I had to obey. I almost started to believe the door would never change. The voice emerges. On the 8th night, I heard the voice behind the door speak for the first time. Not be afraid. Didn't sound threatening. In fact, it had a gentle tone that only made it all that more disturbing. I remember walking up to the door and standing in front of it, my pulse erratic as my body shivered slightly. A part of me wanted to open the door and put a name to the voice, but I remembered my grandpa's note, not be afraid. It said it again, softer this time. I followed the third rule, listen without answering. So I stood there, shaking, listening to that voice. As the hours dragged on, I kept thinking about how my grandpa sat in the attic every night. Did he deal with the same things I'm dealing with? How did he deal with listening to the voice? Asking myself questions is how I would pass the time watching the door in the dark. It kept my mind sharp during the monotonous ritual of watching the door from sundown to sunrise. That's what it was like for about a week. Routine had almost made the horror feel ordinary. And that's when it decided to change the rules. The rules multiply. Right before I went upstairs one night, I saw it. Another line on my grandpa's note that hadn't been there before. In frantic handwriting it said 6. If it cries, ignore it. From then on, each night only got worse. The crying started around 1 a.m. It was the kind of crying a wounded animal made. I wanted to help. Anything to make the cries stop. I almost whispered, "Are you okay?" But the rule was clear, ignore it, so I did. In response, the floorboards near the door had darkened, and the air around it shimmered like heat off asphalt. Whatever was behind that door, it wasn't just growing stronger. It was changing the world around it. I could feel it noticing me more each night. And then, as if sensing my fear, the rules changed again. A couple of weeks later, just before I made my way upstairs, I noticed some new lines had been written on the note 7. It will show you things. Do not believe them. 8. It will tell you the future, but it's all a lie. The ink looked fresh this time, like someone or something had written them just moments before I came upstairs. They didn't make sense to me. Not until the door made me understand. Temptations of the future. It didn't scream or cry like it had before. Instead, it spoke calmly about the things that awaited me in the future. You're going to become head of your department, Nathan. You'll fall in love and have 3 children, Elise, Michael, and Jonah. The names echoed in my head like they belonged there all along. Elise will have your eyes. Jonah will want to be a pharmacist like his grandmother. My eyes burned as tears threatened to fall. They'll all live long, happy lives, unless you keep me in here. For a second, my body actually moved. I felt my weight shift forward like some part of me had already made the decision. I pictured my future the way it described. Warm, bright, full of laughter. I wanted it. God, I wanted it so badly. But I saw through the threat masquerading as hope. I remembered my grandpa's handwriting again, warning me of the consequences, and forced myself to step back. What had once been calm and persuasive, telling me things about myself, about the future, about promises too good to be true, became violent, almost desperate. With each sob and scream, the door groaned in a sickening rhythm, barely containing whatever was battering against it. I covered my ears, begging for the noise to stop. And after a few minutes it did. For a moment I thought I had earned silence. But silence, I learned, was just the calm before something worse. Illusions and apparitions. The door's cracks began widening, twisting upward with sick crunches, the wood shifting to form the shapes of lips, dozens of them. They were murmuring the story of a peaceful life waiting for me. If only I would open the door, its words filled the darkness. And shadows moved all around in shapes I recognized. My grandpa appeared next to me, but not the one I saw in the casket at the funeral, but the youthful one from old photographs. "Grandson," he whispered in a voice that almost sounded like his. I didn't speak. I couldn't, even though I wanted to very badly. My dad waved at me and told me how proud he was of me. My mom smiled and beckoned for me to open the door so we could be reunited as a family. I leaned in front of the door, my hand on the knob about to turn it, when I saw something blink in the keyhole. It was an eye, black and moist, sliding sideways, watching me, refusing to blink. I stumbled back, and the whispers stopped. The silence felt heavier than the noise. But even in the stillness, something was shifting. I used the flashlight on my phone to keep myself from nodding off in the early hours of the morning. Sometime around 2:30 a.m., I noticed the shadows started to pulse against the light. Every few seconds, the door's wine-dark surface would brighten from the inside out, glowing faintly, like there was something behind it pressing its face right against the wood. That image alone was enough to make me sit in the darkness the rest of the night until the sun signaled it was morning. Every night I felt myself unravel a little more. My thoughts weren't just mine anymore. They had a different voice. The door wasn't just trying to break through. It was trying to break in, as if wanting to listen closer to what I have to say. Maybe that's why the rules kept getting more difficult each night. It knew my thoughts before I did, bargains and deceptions. Before I went upstairs one time, I found 2 new rules written in the steam on the bathroom mirror. They read: 9. It will try to bargain. Do not accept 10. Do not believe the sounds you will hear. It will do anything to make you leave your post. I thought I understood the rules, until the early hours of the morning when it didn't knock but begged profusely. "Nathan, let me out. Please, just once. I can make it stop." I wasn't hearing just the voice of the door. I was hearing screams of my parents. They were as gut-wrenching as they were familiar, and I heard them coming from downstairs, then outside, then under the floorboards. A moment later I smelled smoke. It was faint at first, but the smell of burnt wood and melting plastic filled the air. I nearly bolted downstairs, my body ready to run and save them. But then I remembered the rule telling me not to believe the sounds I'm hearing. The door was toying with me by digging into the deepest trauma it could find. I clenched my fists and stared at the door, unmoving. It spoke in my mom's voice, then my dad's, then Grandpa, sometimes weaving all three into one seamless, haunting sentence. Then it spoke in my voice, in the same tremble I've heard in myself every night since I moved in. "Please, let me out, let me out, I just want out." Frozen in place, I endured its begging for hours. My body screamed for a break. Even just the relief of closing my eyes, I was losing focus fast. The kind of fatigue that makes your eyes twitch just to stay open. I had to do something. A desperate plan surfaced. A way to trick it, maybe. Hopping to cheat the rules, I angled a mirror across from me. One eye could rest while the other kept watch. For a time it worked. Until the reflection shifted in the mirror, the door stood wide open. Something slithered out on all fours. Gray-skinned and scaly, bones cracking with each movement. Its head tilted toward me. Not in curiosity, but in mimicry. Like it was practicing being human, I snapped my eyes to the real door. The real door was still shut tight, breathing. When I looked back, the mirror was empty, except for 5 wet fingerprints smeared downward, like someone had leaned against it from the inside. I sat there for a long time after that. The lantern burned out, but I couldn't bring myself to light another one. I kept thinking about my grandpa, standing in the same spot for 60 years, his eyes fixed on the same door, watching it breathe, whisper, and beg. Did he ever think about just walking away? I think about leaving every night. I think about the stairs behind me, about sunlight, about sleep. But then I remember what my grandpa asked of me. My responsibility is what keeps me here, and the fear of what happens if I stop watching. When morning came, I didn't remember falling asleep. I only remembered the mirror, and the way those fingerprints stained it. To drown out the noise, I fixated on one impossible question. How did Grandpa carry this burden for decades? The more I thought about it, the more I feared the real answer. Maybe he didn't. The inevitable fatigue. For a while, nothing really changed outside of my routine. The knocking and the voices pleading behind the door. That is until some more rules appeared on the page 11. A single moment of inattention is all it needs. Do not falter. 12. Do not fall asleep in front of the door. At this point I was delirious and running on fumes. I could barely stay awake at work, and I was averaging maybe 1–2 hours of sleep a night. There's only so much coffee and energy drinks can do for your body before it stops working as effectively. There was one instant where my eyes almost fluttered shut, and I swear I felt something brush against my cheek. The knocking started again. But it wasn't coming from the door anymore, it was coming from behind me. I spun around, nearly tripping over the lantern. Then the walls, the window, and even the ceiling above me all echoed with that knocking sound. The door would shake, the voices would scream. I'd see my loved ones begging for me to open the door, but I wouldn't. The voice behind the door would speak things to me like, "Do not be afraid. Open the door, Nathan, and I will make all of this stop." I ignored it. At around 3 a.m., my phone started ringing across the floorboards. The screen said, Grandpa. Seeing his smiling face on the screen shattered something in me. Because I knew he was dead, despite the feeling in my gut telling me not to, I answered. Nothing about the rules said that I couldn't take a phone call. Nathan, his voice crackled through the phone speaker. You've done enough, my boy. Let me take your place. Go downstairs and rest now. My thumb hovered over the screen, my heart thudding as I remembered the other voices, the lies. I ended the call. The phone rang nonstop until sunrise. The countdown begins. Hours later, a new rule appeared. One that nearly broke me. In slanted, sloppy letters was the worst one I had seen yet. 13. Eventually, you will fail. Fight it off for as long as you can. I read that line over and over until the ink blurred. The words didn't feel like a warning anymore. They felt like a countdown, not just because of what it said, but because of what it didn't. Maybe this is what Grandpa meant. Maybe failure isn't about opening the door. It's about how long you can last before you want to. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. The last few nights I've been hearing slow, deliberate footsteps behind the door, and the floorboards creaking in time with my own heartbeat. I keep telling myself none of it's real, that I'm still the one in control. But the longer I watch, the more I notice the door wasn't where it used to be. Last week I marked its position on the floor with painter's tape to signify a border I wouldn't cross. I checked last night and the tape was gone. And the door had moved. It had only moved just a few inches at first. And it made me think that maybe I was imagining it. After all, I was running on empty in terms of sleep. But night after night it kept inching closer. It didn't drag or creak. It just shifted like it wanted to be closer to me. I measured the gap once. 10 feet, then 8, then 6. I stopped checking after that. The space between me and it was shrinking, and I swear I could feel the heat of its breath on my face. Sometimes the floorboard sank a little beneath it, like it was pressing down with weight. Whatever was behind it was coming for me. This discovery led to another rule. No matter how close the door gets to you, do not touch it. I didn't plan on it. I was too tired to plan anything anymore. Just existing felt like a strategy in itself. Last night I swear I saw something move beneath the wood, like a hand pressing out. I think my grandpa's 60 years only bought us time. And now that time is almost gone. He kept whatever this thing is locked away for decades. And now it's my turn. One day it will become somebody else's. I don't want them to suffer like I and the men in my family before me have. The hallucinations deepen. My hands won't stop trembling. I haven't slept in days. I've started hallucinating. At least I hope they're hallucinations. I swear I saw the attic walls breathing last night. I wonder if the door is even real. Maybe I've lost my mind. Trapped in a psych ward, mumbling while unseen eyes watch through glass. I can hear them all, my parents, Grandpa, myself. They all speak from behind the door. And the longer I listen, the more their words sound like truth. A new rule appeared, carved directly into the attic floor just in front of where I sit. 15. When your eyes close for the last time, the door will open from the inside. I don't know if I'm protecting the world from what's behind the door, or if I'm looking after it so it can't escape before it's ready. Maybe that's what Grandpa meant when he said he failed. Not that he lost, but that he finally understood what he was guarding. And yet he kept watching, so now I do too. There's one rule Grandpa never wrote: if the door ever stops whispering, it means it's already won. My parents call to me now. And now another rule. 16. You will forget which side of the door you're on. If Grandpa could still see me now, I hope he knows I tried. The latch just turned. unpacking Grandpa's note and the family legacy. Grandpa's note sat heavy in my hands that first night, its words a map to a nightmare I never asked for. As I read it over and over in the attic's dim light, I realized it wasn't just instructions. It was his final plea, wrapped in layers of fear and faith. The rules he laid out formed the backbone of my new reality, each one a thread tying me to a legacy of silent guardians before me. They promised safety for the world but chained me to the door, testing every ounce of will I had. In those early hours, staring at the crimson wood, I felt Grandpa's hope in me flicker like a candle against the dark, urging me to prove I could carry what he could not. The rules that changed everything. Those original rules hit me like cold water, simple on the page but brutal in practice. The first one, never open the door no matter what you hear, became my constant battle. Sounds clawed at my ears, from knocks that rattled my bones to cries that tugged at my heart, yet I had to sit still, palms pressed to my thighs. It protected the barrier between us and whatever lurked inside, but the weight of ignoring pleas that sounded so human crushed my spirit night after night. Grandpa trusted my resolve here, believing I could stare down temptation where he sometimes wavered. Staying planted in front of the door, whether standing or sitting, felt like rooting myself to the spot, a living anchor against the pull to flee. I couldn't wander the attic or even shift too far. The rule forced me into a vigil that blurred hours into endless strain on my legs and back. This guard duty shielded the house from intrusion, yet it turned me into a prisoner in my own home, my body screaming for movement while my mind replayed Grandpa's words. He saw strength in me to hold that line, a steadiness he hoped would outlast his own fatigue. The 10-foot limit amplified the isolation, drawing an invisible circle around me and the door that no step could breach. Anything beyond that distance risked the latch turning on its own, so I measured every inch in the dark, heart pounding if I edged too close to the stairs. It kept the entity contained, a buffer of space like a moat, but the confinement bred paranoia, making the attic feel smaller each night. Grandpa pinned his legacy on my ability to respect that boundary, his note a testament to the discipline he passed down. When the voice spoke, the rule to never respond clamped my lips shut, turning conversations into one-sided torments. It whispered promises or taunts, each word designed to provoke, but silence was my shield, denying it the connection it craved. This restraint saved me from deeper entanglement, yet the urge to shout back built like pressure in my chest, a burden that chipped away at my sanity. In his hope for me, Grandpa imagined my quiet strength as the key to enduring what broke others in our line. Closing my eyes only if I wanted them open forever drilled fear into my core, a warning against even brief surrender to exhaustion. Blinking became deliberate, my lids heavy weights I lifted against the pull of sleep, for one slip might invite visions or worse. It preserved my watch, a vigilant gaze that warded off the unseen, but the constant alertness drained me, turning rest into a distant memory. Grandpa believed my unyielding eyes would honor his lifelong stare, a final act of defiance. Remaining at my post through every shift meant no breaks, no escapes until dawn broke the spell. The attic became my world, the door my only companion, as I fought the instinct to run downstairs for water or light. This commitment locked the threat away, but it eroded my sense of self, blending duty with despair. He counted on my perseverance, seeing in me the fortitude to claim the post as my own. Sleep came only with sunrise, a cruel mercy that reset the cycle but left me hollow by dusk. Nights bled into days of fog, my body begging for more, yet the rule enforced the rhythm, ensuring the door rested under sunlight's guard. It bought time for the world, but the debt to my health mounted, a sacrifice Grandpa knew too well. His faith in my endurance shone through, a quiet prayer that I would rise each evening unbroken. These rules wove protection with pain, each one a double-edged blade Grandpa forged from his own trials. He hoped my strength would turn them into armor, not just chains, carrying the family legacy forward where his ended. Why this secret stayed hidden for generations. Grandpa buried this truth deep, especially from the women who shaped our family, not out of distrust but raw fear for their peace. He watched the door manifest only for men like him and me, a bloodline curse that vanished from view for everyone else. To Grandma and Mom, his late nights in the attic must have seemed like madness, endless hours staring at blank walls while he poured out explanations they couldn't grasp. He chose silence to spare them the terror, letting them believe he was lost in grief or work rather than chained to a breathing horror. That choice isolated him, turning shared meals into masks where he smiled through exhaustion, his love a quiet shield against questions that could shatter their world. The burden warped his life in ways I now feel echoing in my bones. Decades of vigilance stole his freedom, forcing him to miss birthdays, school plays, and simple joys, all to keep the door sealed. He built walls of excuses, growing distant as the entity learned his weaknesses, much like it probes mine now. His marriage strained under unspoken weight. Grandma's worry etched lines on her face, yet he held firm, trading intimacy for safety. In the end, it left him a shadow of the man I idolized. His final years a solitary stand that protected us all but cost him everything. For me, orphaned young by that fire, this secret cuts deeper, a thread linking my losses to his sacrifices. Without parents or siblings, Grandpa was my anchor, his hidden watch the reason I had any childhood at all. He kept it from the women to preserve their light, but it bound the men in darkness, a legacy of quiet heroes. Now, as the door inches closer, I wonder if his silence was mercy or a heavier curse passed to me, alone in the night with his hope as my only light. The implications linger like the attic's chill. Our family's women thrived in ignorance, but we men paid the price, generation after generation, until someone breaks. My first night guarding the attic door. That first night in the attic changed everything for me. I climbed those creaky stairs with Grandpa's note clutched in my hand, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The air up there felt thick, almost alive, as if the house itself held its breath. I settled on the floor just a few feet from the door, its red wood gleaming under the faint moonlight. Silence wrapped around me at first, but I knew it would not last. Grandpa's words echoed in my mind. Stay close, watch without fail. As the clock ticked past midnight, the real test began, pulling me into a world of sounds and sensations that tested my every nerve. I sat there, alone with the unknown, determined to honor his trust, the knocking that shook me awake. I had dozed off for a moment despite my best efforts. Then it came, a soft knock like a finger tapping on wood. It pulled me upright, eyes wide in the dark. Was that real? I leaned forward, straining to listen. Another knock followed, a bit firmer this time, echoing through the quiet attic. My skin prickled. I shifted closer but kept my distance under 10 feet just as the rules demanded. The knocks grew bolder. They turned into steady raps that made the door vibrate slightly. I gripped the floorboards, my breath catching. Each one hit harder, like fists now, pounding with a rhythm that matched my racing pulse. The door shuddered, the whole frame rattling as if something massive pressed against it from the other side. Dust sifted from the ceiling, and the air hummed with the force. I fell back hard, my shoulder hitting the wall with a thud. Pain shot through me, but I scrambled up, refusing to retreat beyond the invisible line. Sweat beaded on my forehead, my hands trembled as I stared at the shaking door. The knocks built to a frenzy, loud enough to drown out my thoughts. Would it burst open? I pressed my back against the opposite wall, still within bounds, whispering the rules to myself. Stay put. Do not run. Finally, the pounding slowed, then stopped. Silence returned, heavier than before. I sat there, chest heaving, realizing this was only the start. The door had tested me and I had held my ground, but fear clawed at my insides. How many more nights like this? Grandpa had endured them all, now it was my turn to prove I could too. Word count. 152 when the door started breathing. The attic fell quiet after the knocks faded, but relief lasted only seconds. A new sensation stirred the air, warm puffs like breaths from a living thing. They came slow and steady, brushing my face with damp heat. I froze, watching the door's surface rise and fall in rhythm as if lungs expanded behind the wood. Each exhale carried a sour stench like spoiled fruit mixed with rot. It filled my nose, turning my stomach. What kind of creature breathed like that? I inched back, careful not to cross the 10-foot mark, my mind racing through Grandpa's warnings. The rhythm quickened slightly, mocking my fear, warm air washing over me in waves. Isolation hit hard. No one else could see this, feel this. I was alone with it, the guardian in the dark. I pressed a sleeve to my face against the odor, eyes locked on the door. Backing up more tempted me, but the rules held me firm. Resolve burned in my chest. I would not break. Hours dragged on, the breathing a constant reminder of what waited inside. Doubt crept in. Could I last the night? Dawn's first light crept through the window, chasing the warmth away. The door stilled, the foul smell fading with the sun. Relief washed over me like cool water. I slumped against the wall, exhausted but unbroken. That sunrise saved me, a brief escape from the vigil.